Millions of voters have already cast their ballots for the midterms, and we still have 3 weeks to go until Election Day. Today I'm going to talk about the early numbers and who's so far benefiting from the early surge. I'm Michele Carroll. Welcome to the News Diet. In just a few weeks, the U.S. will hold its first elections since the very memorable 2020 elections, which resulted in literal chaos in the form of rioters storming the Capitol to prevent Joe Biden from being declared the winner of the presidency. Now, these elections aren't for a new president, but they are to determine what political parties will hold majorities in Congress, as well as in state and local seats around the country, which is still a big deal, as they'll determine the course of our communities and country for the next 2 years and possibly beyond. Traditionally, midterms don't see as high a voter turnout as presidential years, but this year, the turnout is already breaking records, and Election Day is still 3 weeks away. In some states, early voting opens as early as 46 days before Election Day, so already we're able to get a gauge of voter enthusiasm and early political leanings. It is important to point out, though, that even though pundits and pollsters might speculate as to what early voting results mean, at the end of the day, it's hard to say what the results will be until after all ballots are in on November 8th. Data from the past years have shown that some groups tend to come out stronger for early voting, only for others to balance things out by preferring to cast their ballots in person on the day. For example, looking back to the 2020 elections, Democrats made up 53% of early voters, and Republicans only made up 36%, according to the data firm TargetSmart. According to the same analysis, it was also older voters who came out early, making up 70% of early voters, with younger ones holding out until the day. So a lot of the data being analyzed is likely not showing the full picture yet, but it's still helpful for getting a grasp on what the overall turnout will be and to see what bases are energized to get out. Now, election predictors have had quite the evolution over the last few months. Earlier in the year, there was a heavy narrative of a GOP blowout in November for both the House and the Senate, considering several botched policies from the Biden administration, which included the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan, skyrocketing inflation, a confusing COVID response, rising crime rates, and a southern border crisis. But then, in a turn of events, there appeared to be glimmers of hope for the Democrats when hot-button topics turned things around. One of those was the Supreme Court ruling to overturn Roe v. Wade. When that ruling broke, Democrats felt they finally had some desperately needed ammo to stage a midterm comeback. And then, gas prices started to decline, finally giving Americans a reason to breathe about the economic trajectory. And then, Biden and the congressional Democrats managed to pass the massive Inflation Reduction Act, which included some of the most progressive policies to date for the drug industry, energy sector, and corporate tax rates. So at this point, the race looked to get tighter, and it was starting to look like maybe Democrats could at least hold on to the Senate. Fast forward to now, a few weeks out from Election Day, and it is looking like some of that narrative may have faded. The economy is still not doing well, the decline in gas prices didn't seem to be long-lasting, and issues regarding the rising costs of living and crime rates are looking to take precedence over the social issues Democrats were betting on, like Roe v. Wade. Again, it's all speculation at this point, but now at least we can get a look at real data coming in from real votes. And so far, the early voting numbers are coming in very high. In Georgia, the in-person turnout is already up 70% compared to the 2018 midterms, according to the Secretary of State's office. Just on day 4 of early voting, and almost 500,000 ballots have been cast. In North Carolina, absentee ballot requests have gone up 114%, and in Florida, total early voting is already up 50%. So the question is why? Why are voters coming out so strong this year? Is it that voters are more fired up because of how contentious the 2020 elections were? Are the policies around women's issues causing more voter turnout after all? Another theory is that since this is now the second election cycle since COVID hit, maybe more voters are comfortable with the process of casting early ballots so as to avoid longer lines. Another thought worth pointing out is that maybe people are nervous about the new laws affecting their ability to vote. As a reminder, several new laws have taken place around the country regarding the voting process. These can include ID requirements, limits on mail-in ballots, and more. Supporters of these new rules say it's to ensure election integrity and to prevent fraud. And critics say it's an attempt to suppress Democratic voters. So far, what we're seeing is a stronger turnout among Democrats, who are responsible for 55% of ballots cast so far. GOP voters are making up about 35%, and unaffiliated voters the remaining 11%. These types of results are especially interesting for swing states like Georgia. I mentioned before how the state is seeing record-level numbers, with so far Democrat voters holding the lead of 52% of votes, compared to only 41% of Republican votes. What's even more interesting is that the numbers so far are swapped from what they were in 2018 at the same time, where Republicans had the lead in early voting by 52% and Democrats 43%. Also, it's showing women are coming out early, comprising about 54% of the vote so far. The numbers are even more stark in fellow swing state of Pennsylvania, where Democrats are accounting for 53% so far to only 23% of Republicans. At this stage, in 2018, GOP voters were ahead. Overall, out of the 5.5 million who had cast their votes last week, Democratic voter turnout is up 20% higher than Republicans, so it does appear to be a strong start for the left. But we still have 3 weeks, and again, GOP voters tend to be more skeptical about mail-in ballots. What we do know is that Americans on both sides are more energized than a typical midterm, so the results really could go either way, especially in the Senate, where even one seat change could change the whole dynamic of the chamber, and also governorships of swing states that are already running close races. You've just been informed, so now it's time to get on with your day. I'm Michele Carroll. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode and want to continue following a healthier alternative for staying informed, where I forgo partisan fighting and fear-driven narratives and just get to the point, then please be sure to hit that subscribe button, as of course you'll get more of this show in your feed, and also you'll be helping this new channel grow and reject sensational media. Thank you so much for your support, and I can't wait to see you in the next episode.